We're trying to work out the area of an irregular shape, like this star here. Now when you do that, it's one way of doing it is to place it on grid paper, work out the area of each square grid, and then count up how many grid squares are covered by the shape. So before we start this, let's just have a quick measure of the grid with my, here we go, found it. And it works out to be, well, this is 0.5 of a centimetre by 0.5 of a centimetre. Be careful, you might be tempted to say that's 0.5 square centimetres, but it's not. Each grid square is 0.5 times 0.5, and if you work out the area on the calculator, 0.5 length times width 0.5 equals 0.25. 0.25 of course is a quarter, and I suppose that makes sense. If you look at 4 of these squares put together, that would measure 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre by 1 centimetre, 1 square centimetre big. So each little one is 0.25, a quarter of a square centimetre. Now we want to work out the area of the shape, so what we're going to do is count the number of squares that are taken up by the shape. Now what we're going to do is count the squares which are at least half covered. Half or more covered, we're going to count it, so we're going to count this square here, but we wouldn't count this square here, this little tip square, because it's less than half covered. Only count squares which are more than half covered. Now there is going to be a little inaccuracy here, but hopefully what will happen is it'll balance out. We're counting some squares which aren't fully covered, but there are other squares which are partly covered which we're not counting, and our mistakes should cancel each other out. So we're going to count this one because it's half covered. This one's just about all covered. This one here I would say is more than half covered, so I will count it. We won't count this one, we'll count this one. More than half covered, more than half covered, more than half covered, more than half covered, and more than half covered. So far I've got 10 squares ticked. One thing you can do to make things a little bit easier is you can block out part of your diagram. You see all of these squares here are all going to be covered. Right over there, that one will be covered as well, and so will all of these. So that's a 5 by 5. There's 25 squares in there which are all ticked. I've got 10 here, and we can now just tick ones which are more than half covered. I suppose that's a debatable thing there. I'd probably say not half covered. Half covered, yes, no. Yes, 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 no, yes, 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 and no. Now you can count those up. I've been doing that in my head as I go along. I've got 52 squares which are covered. So the area is going to equal 52 squares, but each square is 0.25 of a square centimetre. 0.25. So we can now get out the calculator, and I've already got 0.25 on the screen, so times it by 52 squares to find out the area is 13 square centimetres. You can practice this technique with some questions in the back of the book there.